for our afternoon session, we have Dr. Catherine Baker from Birmingham School of Art. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Lucy. Afternoon, everybody. I've got this post-lunch digestive lull slot, so hopefully I'll keep you entertained. And I'm going to try and catch up on a bit of time. So yes, I work in the School of Art, and it says in here I'm an associate professor. Now I'm a reader in art and health. But I've been asked this afternoon really to talk about kind of drawing research at ECU, and that's across our campuses, which is far bigger and involves a lot more people than I could possibly fit in this slot. So I'm just really going to talk about people whose practices that I know, who are students and staff, and then other members of staff who submitted from the call for papers. Did it move on? No? So Paul Wakelam is one of our current MA Fine Art students. His career began in architecture, and like I said, he's currently studying on the MA in Fine Art here in the School of Art, concurrently with his continuing work as an architect. His practice explored through the connections made possible and through and between drawn marks and printmaking is very much in contrast to the precision of his architectural drawing. His current practice explores his connectedness with landscape, and he describes this as an evolving method of exploring himself and his response to unstructured natural spaces. Despite his work investigating a well-trodden path that has fascinated generations of artists before him, what's emerging within his work of late is a particular focus on the implements of making a mark, highlighting the role that objects play within the making process, and something that perhaps as Tufnell and Crick may describe as having a dialogue with something other than yourself. Objects and/or tools in this context aren't passive, but have agency in the making process. So whilst the phrase works on paper, often used to describe a broad plethora of drawings, this term belies its position as the holder or archivist of the drawing in time and place. Edward Johnny Turpey, as everyone will know him as Johnny, is one of our current PhD students in the final stages. And Johnny's description of his practice is that his research interrogates contemporary methods that aim to contribute to the making of meaningful fine art portraiture. And the core question inquires, how can artists contribute meaningful printed portraits in the saturated world of smartphone digital portraits? Excuse me, I think that's curry for lunch. The tendered answer is located in a slower methodology of considered handmade marks that carry the labour of their making through silkscreen printed outcomes. His practice-based methodology offers a framework of dual research ambitions. Firstly, the examination of portraiture through photography, drawing and silkscreen printmaking. And secondly, the scholarly study of the historical, philosophical and ethical considerations of photography, print and the portrait. So these outcomes might at first glance appear comfortably sitting within the conventions of observational drawing. However, there is deception on their part, and this deception is part of a deeper discourse where both viewer and subject become part of a layered process that is both physical and theoretical. Dominant within the research methodology is an in-depth dissection of the rich ethical dilemma of consent that exists between the artist and the observed individual, where the subject has unknowingly become the topic of the artist's gaze. So what we're looking at here is not a drawing, but a print. And Johnny's new work, which is not part of his PhD, which I have included here, in many ways continues the idea of the multiple common to printmaking, but in this context, health and in particular cells. Sian Hindle is a member of staff in our jewellery school. And Sian describes that while she trained as a jeweller, drawing now sits at the heart of her creative practice. And the drawings shown here reflect the focus of her doctoral research, which addressed questions around jewellery's role in embodied identity. The role of drawing in the project was twofold. It was a key element of her inquiry into the embodied experience of wearing jewellery and identity construction, and two, a means of engaging participants in exploring this experience. The latter happened through the development of what she describes as annotated silhouette drawings. I don't have any visuals for this, so I apologise. And I go back to whoever it was earlier who got prompted that there was too much writing in their slides. So I apologise if I've fallen into that trap. Jessica Wythe's research explores many ethical and legal issues to consider when involving children and young people in research, particularly children with MVLD who cannot verbally consent to their participation. So in many ways, Jessica's work aligns very much with Johnny Turpey's. Retrospectively, more creative and innovative approaches to research are being utilised to facilitate individuals with NVLD to consent and participate in research. Drawing is becoming more commonly used as a tool for research to contextualise and conceptualise written and spoken ideas and experiences. And utilising drawings as a research tool can provide contextual meaning to feelings, emotions and experiences, and facilitate an outlet for individuals with NVLD to express their thoughts and opinions. Jessica's research involves investigating the efficacy of drawing as a tool for research involving children with NVLD. She intends her mixed methods approach, including drawing, to offer different perspectives and contribute to the production of a positive case for contemporary drawing research practice for children and young people with SEND in the United Kingdom. Gemma Ince is another member of staff who works in illustration. In 2013, a family health situation forced Gemma to adopt drawing processes to examine ways to explore or deal with the difficulty at hand. By putting marks on paper, she says, I express something while observing it too, witnessing what I am feeling. The drawings articulated some of the challenging conditions of desolation in surreal settings of a care home or an accident emergency ward. During recent years, Gemma developed drawing to grieve in other places too. For instance, a commission for a play poster illustration that involved twisted and entangled roots or creating prints of her drawings of insects and tiny creatures and plants. And she states, I still feel now, by drawing life, I am examining it and its fragility. And she's got current other kind of commissions that she's working on. I'm going back a little bit further. So this was a drawing that was produced quite some time ago and involved kind of working in a lot of labs to be able to get a lot of data from the act of looking and seeing. But here it was intended as an installation to make a shadow drawing. So my research interest in drawing stretched back decades, spanning multiple forays into the expanded understanding of drawing practices. And this sculptural shadow drawing installation was conceived as part of a long-term investigation into the relationship between the eye, vision, and the observed world, and in particular, the thresholds of the perceptual encounter, exploring the in-between of the intuitive and the intentional, a moment that bypasses the hand, both theoretically and to an extent through making, floating between control and the uncontrollable. So this is another drawing that kind of related to that. And I paired it with a drawing from an ongoing project that's been running since about 2015 with a colleague of mine called Kimberly Foster, who's now at Goldsmiths, but we used to work together at Norwich University of the Arts. When we both left Norwich, we found ourselves sort of geographically distant from each other. So we came up with a drawing project that would enable us to still work together despite having no proximity. So this is a ongoing drawing project between myself and Kimberly, and it takes the form of a drawing exchange of sorts, whereby we send each other drawings that have the potential to be continued by the other as an absent maker, with the only instruction is that the drawing should not yield. The combined drawings and the space they occupy resists the emergence of a hierarchy, and they are to maintain their status while in the hands of the other, refusing a place where they might become settled. I'm not sure that we ever decided whether it achieved that, but it's ongoing, so we're still trying. And I'd like now just actually to read a passage from, and I'm going back quite a way. This is the drawing, Centre for Drawing in the first year that was set up at Wimbledon in the late 90s. And it was, this is a quote that I think kind of finds a connection between the end of this presentation and a call that I'd like to share with you as an ideal audience. And it's, and I apologise, I'm bound to get his name wrong, Von Van Phonic, in conversation with Angela Kingston. And it was about his time spent drawing as part of the residency. I limited myself to 1 or 2 tools to make these drawings, mainly brushes and a very small amount of pencil. But somehow with a brush, you can create different sounds and different tonalities. I'm not talking about music, just sound. The actual process is very quiet. You just dip your brush in the water, you rinse the brush. You're not thinking about what a sculptor would do, cutting, banging, or melting. It's a very quiet, an extremely quiet activity. But at the same time, through that silence, somehow sounds reappear. And that's why I talk about sound. And again, once when the show was up and I was on my own in the room, I could almost hear the noise come out of the drawings. And that's how I felt. Not necessarily a living creature, but all this sound, scratching or pushing or rubbing or. And with that in mind, I placed at the back, and I am cashing in as one of the editorial team for Drawing Research Theory and Practice. So this is a shameless plug. We have a special call out at the moment that is called Listening, Drawing, Sounding. And I promised the guys that I would try and catch up some time, which I think I've done. So I'm not going to read this to you, but there are some copies at the back. If anybody would like to talk about it, you can contact me via email, or I'm around for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.